All right, folks, we're going to go ahead and get started for the day. Hello to our folks online joining us and to our folks in person joining us for this session. Talking about individualized development plans. I'm sure we'll have a couple of folks log in and maybe some other folks join us in person. If you can, next time, if you want to join us in person, we do have cookies here in the room and some lemonade. So next time, if you want to come hang out with us, we'll be happy to have you. But joining online is good too. I'm Jesse Singleton. I am the Assistant Director for Student Support with UTEP's Graduate School. And I am joined also by Elizabeth Diney, who is here joining us in the room today, but also virtually to assist with the virtual component. She's listed as the other Jesse Singleton in the room right now for our virtual attendees. As we go through, if you have any issues with technology, sound quality isn't great, or if you have questions, feel free to drop that in the chat and Elizabeth will make sure that I know about it as the presenter. If I can just get a thumbs up or something from the group, making sure that sound quality is good and y'all can hear me.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sophia. I appreciate you. All right. And as we go through, I will let you know, feel free to, for folks in the room and people online, if you have questions, you want me to go over something a little bit more in depth, or if I haven't articulated something well, let me know that. I am happy to stop and talk with you more about that through our sessions, right? I try to be pretty informal in that and make sure we're answering your questions and get what you need out of the session. So feel free to come off mute, drop in the chat, however you're most comfortable with it. I'll be happy to do that. So we are talking about individualized development plans, right? And if I can just get a sense of where we're at with this for folks in the room and our folks online, you can maybe drop this in the chat. If this is your first time writing an IDP, let us know that. If you have already submitted one before, let us know that. So people can let me know in the chat, and then my people in the room, we've got one first timer, and then you submitted one before. One before. First time doing it. Okay. All right. That's just helpful to know where we're at. I'm going to take a peek at the chat here and see. A lot of first timers. All right. Excellent. Good. Well, I'm glad you're here. Let's talk about that, whether you're first time or trying to get a little bit more refined at your IDP. This really session is meant for everybody to attend on that. We do it early in the semester, each semester, because when we do our what's called our first semester graduate experience, the survey data from that tells us that students are less confident about writing an IDP versus other skills, right? When we ask them about their ability to write or their ability to navigate the campus, things like that, or their resources, they're fairly confident, their ability to manage time. When we ask them about IDPs, they're less confident. Probably because they're like, I don't know what that is, never heard of it before, never done one before, right? So we try to put it early in the semester so we can talk with you about it, get it out of the way, and make sure you feel comfortable with it. I'm gonna talk to you about why we do IDPs, what the structure is. Should be a good session overall. But I like to start with why we do them in the first place, right? Why do we have you all as graduate students submit IDPs, right? And now in the graduate school, all of our doctoral students are required to submit an IDP annually to their program that then comes to us, right? It's not on the same time frame for every program. We let programs dictate when you have to submit one. Some folks early in the semester, some folks late in the semester or a year. But everyone who's a doctoral student has to write one, right? And the reason we require it is that research tells us it tangibly increases student success. Research tells us this. We know that from research that it increases productivity if goal setting is included and done well in the document, right? People are more productive. It's been shown to reduce stress through establishing clear expectations and reducing uncertainty for graduate students in their program, right? And so when done well, it lowers your stress level. We know that it allows for you and your mentor to have early interventions. So if you are getting off track, if you're struggling with a certain milestone, if you're not progressing the way they want you to, it allows for early intervention as opposed to finding out 2 or 3 or 4 semesters late that you're not meeting the milestones or not getting what you need out of the program to advance to proposal stage and dissertation. We can attack that early and hopefully course correct, right? So we know that it does that for us. And it saves time for you all as students. Again, when they're done well, you're more efficient and you move through your courses more quickly, you move through your dissertation phase more quickly, you get to your presentation, and then you finish your doctoral degree, right? This is based on doctoral education, but we know for our master's students who choose to do them, it has similar effects, right? On a shorter time scale, because our master students are finishing sooner anyway as smaller programs, right? Shorter programs. And so we know that it has these positive effects when it's done correctly, right? When it's not done correctly, it is just a piece of paper that you scribble on, your mentor signs, and gets turned in, right? It doesn't tangibly impact you. And so that's why we do this session. We talk to students about it because we want you to, from the start, be using them effectively so you get on the right track for your program. That's our goal. That's our intention. That's our initiative with this. So, and again, I'm sure we got a lot of doctoral students here, probably some master students. A lot of us are going to be data focused, research focused. So I want to start up with the data and the research that says this is an effective practice. It's not Jesse saying, I really like this and I want you to do it. I do like it. I do want you to do it. But the research tells us this is a high impact practice and will lead to higher success for students. We've also, one of the other reasons we implemented it as a requirement for doctoral students is twofold. One, the National Science Foundation now requires IDPs be included for any doctoral students that would be covered through the grant, right? So if we have to submit it for NSF grants, we want you to get good at doing it, right? It was already a requirement for National Institute of Health NIH grants, right? And more grants are picking this up as a requirement, which also should indicate to you that it's a high impact practice. And so if they're going to require it, we want you to already do it. We have also for several years required these documents to apply for funding with the graduate school. So you want to apply for the Dodson Research Grant or the travel grant, you have to submit your IDP. So we want to train you on how to do it well because we score your IDP in your application. And sometimes the difference between a student receiving funding for the Dodson Research Grant and not receiving funding is the quality of their IDP, right? The research proposals are of similar quality based on the faculty review, but one student clearly has a lot more time invested in their goal setting and support through feedback from their mentor. They're the more fundable candidate and they receive the funding over someone else. And so we want you to feel good about doing these, right? And so that's why we do these sessions. It also something I'll let you know that anytime you need an exemption that comes from our dean, he will look at your IDP first, right? Let's say for some reason, it takes you longer to progress through your program. You're one of those students, you're entering your 8th year in a doctoral program, right? And you need special approval to go to year 8. He's gonna look at your IDP. If your IDP shows no intent to it, no goal setting, no clear path, he's not gonna approve your exemption request, right? Let's say you want an exemption to leveling courses. He's gonna look at your IDP. Do you have a good plan? Without it, he won't approve your department's request. So we want you to be good and feel confident about doing these. So what is an IDP overall? The first thing I'll tell you is that it may vary by program, right? We have a standard template that we use in the graduate school. It's available on our website. You can find it under the internal funding page because again, I require it for your travel grant and your Dodson grant. And so I put it right there so it's easy to find. It's also under the forms tab for current students. But we have a template we recommend that we use, and it's the most common one that students submit to the graduate school. However, your program may have an alternate template. I believe chemistry has an alternate template that adds a couple of sections. Some engineering programs have some alternate templates. You can also find online tools for this, like Imagine PhD or My Science IDP that provide more in-depth digital versions of this, right? But in general, they're going to include long-term and short-term and career goal-setting sections as a core function of the IDP, the Individualized Development Plan, right? And we lead with that on the graduate school template. There is a comment section, which is a space to discuss the challenges and successes since your last review. And if it's your first time submitting one, you can just comment on your experience so far, what challenges you anticipate. So tell us about your story, what you've been doing. There's a short-term goal section. So you're thinking about what's coming up in this next review period, right? So if you think about the long term, we're asking, where are you in graduate school? Why are you pursuing a doctorate? Why are you pursuing a master's degree, right? Why are you here? So we want you to articulate those goals. And then your short-term goals is between this review period and the next review period, what are you doing, right? Professionally and academically, right? And so we're trying to get you to do that. And then there's a space for you to talk about goals since last review. So as you update your IDP annually, you take your goals that were your upcoming, you move them to your prior, and then you comment on how you've done with meeting those goals. right? That self-evaluation loop is really important for this process. There's also a mentor and committee comments under the goals and overall. And I will tell you that a good chunk of our session today is going to be talking about how you navigate that section, right? I'm going to talk to you about goal setting, but you all probably had somebody talk to you about goal setting before. You probably have some experience with goal setting. Maybe you're really good at it. Maybe you're still developing at it, but it's probably not intimidating for you, right? What's intimidating is, how do I get good feedback from my mentor? How do I ask them for it? And so I'm going to spend a good chunk of my time actually talking about that, right? Because that's the skill that is going to potentially be hard. Thank you for sharing that link for me there. I appreciate that. All right. There's also a space where you can just upload and include your CV. I think that's a good practice. We don't require it, but an annual update to your CV is a good idea. And I do a workshop on resume and CV writing too. You'll see it later in the semester if you want to come in and learn more about that. I encourage you to do that as part of your IDP. All right. So if you want to write an effective IDP, you want to be good at it, you want it to serve you well, both for your progress in your program and also when you're submitting it to NSF or to me for the Dotson Research Grant or travel. The first thing I'm going to tell you is I need you to be intentional and reflective in that process, right? If you just scribble stuff down and submit it, it will not tangibly help you, right? It also will not score as well on any evaluation. We're going to be able to see that you didn't put any time and effort into it. So be intentional and reflective when you do that. The second piece is I want you to utilize SMART goals. And we're going to talk about what SMART goals are and how you write them, what they look like in an IDP. But that's the second step. When you write your goals, make them SMART, right? I don't mean intelligently put together. That's an acronym. That's why it's in all caps. And we'll talk about what the letters are on that, right? You need to then seek the constructive feedback and know that it won't automatically be given and that your mentor may not place a lot of value and you may need to pull this out. But you need to seek that feedback. And then you have to revisit and update the plan on a regular basis. Make it a living document. If you only look at it once a year, it will not be nearly as effective for you as if you pull it out regularly during your meetings with your mentor and update the goals as you go. Get feedback as you go, right? Make it a living document that you work on. That also means that when you do an annual update, it's very quick, right? You polish it up and you send it off. And then it's not something you have to worry about when you're making, let's say you're working on an NSF grant. Those are big tasks. The last thing you want to worry about when you're trying to get your NSF grant submitted and the deadline's coming up at midnight and you realize your IDP hasn't been touched in a year, it's a lot of extra work to do that you didn't really need to focus on, right? And then it'll feel like busy work for you versus actually helping, right? So revisit it regularly. When you write your goals, and again, if I'm going too fast on any of this, let me know, but I'm going to move the goal stuff relatively quick because I want to spend more time on the feedback section, right? But when you write your goals, there's variation in your duration, right? You have your long-term goals. This is your career and your job aspiration goals, right? And your long-term goal is not finish your program, right? That's something you're working towards, whether it's master's or doctoral, getting that degree, that's not really the end goal. That's a product. Why are you here? Is it to be a professor? Is it to work in industry? Work for the government? Why are you here? Right? And I encourage you to have a couple versions of this, right? Because you may be in between tracks. Like, you know, I'm interested in the professorate. I may want to work for a Research One institution, but I've also really liked working at potentially the idea of working in a national laboratory. So I have two paths that I'm exploring. Put them both down, right? Explore those as you go forward. Then you have your short-term goals. These are much more concrete, and they're the year and the semester, right? That's where you're writing about completing chapters of your dissertation, article submission, grant applications, right? Tangible things that within that year, within that semester, you want to make sure you complete. That'll move you towards your overall goal of working in the national laboratory, right? Becoming a tenured professor. Now, there's variation by duration. There's also variation by type, right? There are performance goals and there are learning goals. And I encourage you to have both on your document, right? You have your performance goals, like I'm going to finish this chapter. I'm going to take a professional exam or a qualifying exam. I'm going to get a teaching certificate. I'm going to do these different things, right? Those are your performance goals. And you need to have those markers for yourself. Your learning goals are more about what's going to enable you to be successful along your academic journey, right? Working on 3 aspects of your writing. Maybe that you know that your transitions are not your strong suit in your writing. Maybe you know that as a research scientist, you tend to overcomplicate your writing with the heavy scientific dialogue. And it makes it hard to submit a grant application that is readable to a lay audience. So you want to work on that, right? Maybe you want to work on a specific lab technique that you know if you improve will help you not only in your future career, but in your immediate sense, right? You need to get better at that. So you have your learning goals as well. So I want both those things on your document as you're looking forward to what you're doing. And then what we want to do is we want to make those goals SMART. As I mentioned, that's an acronym. And the reason we use this is, again, research shows that when you frame goals in this way, you're much more likely to achieve them, right? And that actually completing the goal piece is important. We can write a goal, but if we never meet it, then it's wasted time, right? But it's really not even a goal, it's an aspiration. So I put on my wall, it's on my vision board, it doesn't really help me. So you want to make your goals specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. That's SMART, right? Specific, pretty easy to understand, but needle in deep on that, right? Make sure there's some kind of measure. How will you know you've achieved success? That's not always a numerical thing, but you have to know what's the end point. How will you know you're successful? Get better at writing is not measurable. How will you know you're better at it, right? Make sure it's achievable, but on that point, I want to say, don't set your goals too low and don't set them too high. I always use this example. I thought it was a really good visual metaphor for it. There used to be this commercial that I would see, right? And it was this young kid, for like 5. And he was like a track outfit with like the number and everything else like that. And he's running on a track and he keeps jumping over hurdles, right? But the hurdles are all about 6 inches off the ground. So every hurdle is easy, right? He's this adorable little kid and he's jumping and he has the first one like he's hurdling it. And then he starts doing spin jumps over the hurdles and stuff. He's having a great time because everything is easy, right? And they don't change. He's just jumping, jumping, jumping. And then he runs up against a full-size adult hurdle. It's at eye level and he stops dead, right? And this commercial thing is about like challenging our kids and making sure that we're, challenging them for the future and arming them well. But those are really good visual metaphor of thinking about how we challenge ourselves, and that if every goal you set is just so easy that you don't have to worry about it, you never challenge yourself. When you come up against something that's truly difficult, you will be stunned, right? And you may not be ready for it. Versus setting yourself progressive levels of challenge that you can meet, but isn't impossible, right? Will challenge you. So don't put in your goals, I'm going to finish my dissertation by tomorrow. You're not, unless you're almost done, right? If you haven't started yet, and you're like, if you haven't started your dissertation and you say you're going to finish it in a month, you will not do that, right? But if you've been making consistent progress, and you're like, I'm going to finish it in a month, maybe. So make sure it's something that'll challenge you, push you, but not insurmountable. That's the achievable piece. Make sure it's relevant to what you're doing as well, right? Putting a goal on this that has, nothing to do with anything, right? Not going to tangibly help you. And then last piece, adding a time limit. And it's okay to miss that deadline, then you just reevaluate. But adding a time limit will create a priority statement and you'll achieve it. With no time limit, everything that has one will always jump over it, right? If it's, I'm going to finish chapter 3 of my dissertation, but you don't give yourself a time limit, every other priority that you have will jump over that. You will do that first, and you will keep pushing the other thing out. So the way this looks, I have some examples. I have my silly example first, and then I'm gonna give you my real example, right? So if I wrote down a goal, my goal is to avoid bees, not the letter grade, the insect. Is that a SMART goal? No, it's not specific, it's not measurable, it's not achievable, it's not relevant, it's not time-bound, right? It may be intelligent if I'm allergic to bees, avoid them, and I'm not. But, it's not specific anyway. Like, how do I know that I've done that, right? So we have to transition that to a SMART goal, right? And so if instead of saying avoid bees, I say avoid being stung more than 10 times during the October honey collection due to allergies, that is a SMART goal. I also might want to consider, why am I collecting honey and why am I a beekeeper if I'm allergic to bees? It's a terrible career choice, but at least my goal is SMART, right? I'm putting a specific goal out there, avoid being stung by a measurable amount 10 times. Maybe that's achievable. I don't actually do beekeeping. I don't know if that's achievable. It's probably not, I'll be honest. It's relevant to what I'm doing. I'm a beekeeper and it's time bound in October. It's relevant to what I'm doing. I have to collect honey, right? So that's transitioning something from a goal to a SMART goal. If I make this a bit more tangible to the work that we do, if you put out there, you want to get a meaningful position within my field after graduation. That's the type of goal that someone would put out there, that if I say avoid bees, you know that's not a SMART goal. But a lot of folks might say get a meaningful position after, that's the goal they'll write down on their IDP, right? I want a job, I want something meaningful. Okay, well, what does that actually mean? You need to make that a SMART goal. So saying you want to accept a job offer for a position that offers opportunities for professional advancement in an academic or professional setting within 2 months of completing your degree, that's a SMART goal. It's specific, it's measurable, it's relevant to what you're doing, and there's time bound on it, right? And this really helps define what is meaningful for you, because what's meaningful for me may not be meaningful for you. So quantify that in some way. Another example, looking at this from an academic goal, right? Complete a partial dissertation draft for mentor review. This is the type of goal I pulled directly off of an IDP getting submitted. It's not a SMART goal. Do you need to do it? Yeah, not a SMART goal. So how do you make sure you actually achieve that goal? Complete chapter 2 and 3 of a dissertation for mentor review by feedback, or for feedback by October 15th, right? Got all the markers that I need for that to be a SMART goal. We understand the differentiation? Excellent. People online, all good? I'm gonna check the chat. I see no questions. We're good. Thank you. I appreciate the verbal feedback. That really helps. So again, goal setting, not super intimidating, right? Good to clarify. And maybe we think we've been writing good goals and now we know a little bit more about it, right? But not super intimidating, right? Something we can definitely handle. I almost knocked over. So now I'm going to show what this looks like on an IDP, right? And this is pulled from someone's IDP they submitted, a good example of what I'm looking for when I say write a good IDP in your goal setting section. So this is short-term goals. They put, and they don't have to be super long. I wrote very verbose, long goals for you all. I was an English major originally when I did my undergrad. You may always, it can be really short. This one has got all the hallmarks of good SMART goals, right? Goal description, complete chapter 4, November 5th by November, chapter 5 by December, send to advisor by December and committee by January, right? That's a SMART goal, right? It's not as verbose as what I wrote. It doesn't have to be. It can be bullet points. It can be that concise, right? A little more verbiage there of talking about an academic or a learning goal. This semester, work with a writing tutor once a week on 3 specific issues: topic development, prepositions in English, and punctuation in English, right? This person had a keen awareness of where their writing needed improvement, and they set a plan to work on it. And then plan to present at AWP in November, turn that paper into an article next semester. So there's a professional development goal. I really like when you guys include those. Shows you're going beyond just the coursework. What are you doing to be a well-rounded professional so that you can get the jobs you want, right? The other piece is important is they're writing about their progress and evaluating and being reflective. Chapter 4 was submitted on time. Chapter 5 was a little bit late because of winter. That's okay. Copy sent. So we're seeing how we're doing, right? We're not beating ourselves up for missing a deadline, but we're tracking how we're doing, right? And 2 weeks late, not that bad on an overall goal of finishing 2 chapters of your dissertation. Versus what I've seen sometimes someone being stuck at the dissertation stage for 2 semesters, 3 semesters, 4 semesters. What are you doing? You know, if you've got all your coursework done, right? Not that I'm not doing work, but like what's happening that you're not getting these chapters submitted? You're not probably setting yourself good goals and sticking to them, right? Talks about progress in meeting with the faculty or the tutor, right? Talks about the presentation and how it went. This is what we're looking for. This is reflective. This is good SMART goals. And so this is what I'm hoping that you do when you submit these IDPs. And again, if you're going to submit an IDP for the travel grant, and I'll tell you the Dodson Research Grant, which opens officially on Monday. Applications collection starts on Monday for that. That goes to a faculty review committee. They're going to look at these. The travel grant, I review that. Other staff within the graduate school review that. This is what I'm looking for when I look at your travel grant. If it doesn't have this level, you're going to lose a point on your. I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to lose a point on your application, and that is a very competitive grant. I have very little money to give away for it, so you want this because if you turn in a garbage IDP, you're not going to get funding. It's just the facts of it, right? So work on these types of things. All right. So see where we're at on time. Half an hour left. Let's take just a couple minutes to work on this. I'm going to shorten the times a little bit so we can get to the feedback section. But we're going to workshop our goals a little bit. And so I know a lot of us we seem like we're mostly new IDP writers, so we'll stick with this activity. I want you to write one long-term goal for your IDP, and then add one semester goal that aligns with it, and then a learning goal that aligns with it, right? And then once you do that, we're going to chat about that a little bit. Sound good? All right, I'm going to put you on the clock for that. We're going to take 2 minutes and do that, okay? All right, and we are back. We've got some good dialogue and conversation with your peers, kind of going through this a little bit in a quick space, right? But I've encouraged you to do, again, we're in a brief session. I'm trying to give you as much information as I can, give you a little practical time to work on it. What I encourage you to do is then take this initial dialogue and start talking to your peers and getting some more feedback about it, right? Start with that space, get some workshopping done on your goals and things you're writing. They'll help articulate things that you're not seeing, right? Maybe something seems really clear to you, but it's very vague to them. And so use your peers for that, right? Get some additional feedback. So we're going to transition from the goals section. We're going to talk about then what's the other piece of this, right? To me, there's two main pieces of an IDP. There's the goal setting, and then there's the feedback section. And I will tell you on pretty much all the IDPs that I receive, the weak point is the feedback. There's either none on there or it's very, very brief, right? You write your goal and all that stuff like that, and it's like student making progress. That's not feedback, right? There are definitely good examples of this, but there's far more examples where there's no mentor feedback. The mentor just signed it, or the feedback they did provide was students on track, good job, right? But that's not actually helping you grow and develop in any way. The feedback piece is definitely the more intimidating of the two. And so I want to spend time talking about how do you seek and get that feedback, because my recommendation to you all is that you need to be in the driver's seat for that, right? Hopefully, and I would love it if you had mentors that pull you in and they walk you through this process and they take that initiative, but we can't guarantee that's going to happen, right? For a variety of reasons. Some of your mentors are just starting out. They're not as well versed in it. Sometimes this isn't their cup of tea, right? And so they don't want to do as much of the mentoring piece. They like to have you work as a student. They want to tutor you in your scientific section, but they're not as people-oriented, right? Or they feel nervous about giving feedback to you because that can be intimidating itself. So how do you be your own best advocate? And that starts with building a strong relationship with your mentor, right? And I can tell you, like, as we're here right now having this conversation about IDPs, there's a group of faculty with Dean Kreitz right now over in another building having a conversation about mentorship and IDPs, right? A unique time where it's happening at the exact same time. I left that session to come here. And so we're trying to get mentors to be more knowledgeable about this, take more initiative on it. But I can tell you is that it is definitely a two-way street, and that like anything in life, you should always be your own best advocate, right? Don't stand on ceremony, wait for someone else to do it. So how do you build that relationship with your mentor? Now, the first one I'll say is easy because we've already talked about it and you're already on that path. Set SMART goals, right? When you come into that session, that meeting, that conversation, and your goals are really clearly articulated, you're making the job easy for the mentor in that regard. They will see you as someone who has the pieces already together. They're going to invest more time in you. Just naturally, they're going to see you as more ready. So first step, we've already got. Check. SMART goals. Second thing is I encourage you to be an active partner and show interest in what they're doing, how they're doing, right? A good conversation. It's not a transactional one-to-one. It's not just I come to you and I get all the things and I leave. You're building a relationship with this person. A good, functional, working relationship that hopefully continues for your career. Because eventually when you leave, you still want your mentor to be someone that you can rely on, right? To help you make broader connections in your field when you're colleagues as opposed to someone you work under, right? So show interest, be an active partner. Maintain and initiate the connection points. Don't wait for them to reach out and tell you when you're going to meet. Talk with them and kind of try to drive that. Now, again, they're going to have their own opinion on how often you'll meet, duration, location, all those things, but initiate the conversation and advocate for yourself on how often you feel you should be meeting and what you need out of that relationship. Show appreciation for what you're doing with them. We're human beings. We feel better when we know we're having a positive impact, right? And so we know we're helping out. And when someone shows appreciation, we're naturally going to go and help them more, right? If I think about my work with you all as students, when I have someone that stops in, I help them with something, and I can see genuine appreciation from them, I'm more likely then to help them and continue in the future versus someone that comes in, they ask a question, I answer it, I never hear from them again, right? Not that I don't care about them, but I don't know if they really want my help. So show appreciation. They'll invest more time. Be prepared for the meetings, right? This should be a no-brainer. But if we think about how often have you showed up to a meeting of some kind and not been fully prepared, right? Not asking for show of hands, but we've all done it. It has definitely happened, right? Don't let that happen with your mentor. If you are prepared for meetings, they're more productive and it builds a relationship. Apply what you learn with them, right? If they're working through, they're giving guidance. If they invest that time in you, they give you some feedback and you find that to be good feedback or a good learning moment, apply that and show them that you've done that. Give them an update. If they talk to you about a way, let's say you're talking with your mentor and you're having a conflict with someone else in the lab, right? Just interpersonal friction. You're like, hey, can we talk about how I can navigate this because I'm a mentor, do it longer than me. How would you navigate this lab environment, this friction that we have? And they give you some ideas on that and you apply that and it's successful. Tell them that, right? This worked. Thank you. That shows appreciation. It shows you're prepared and it shows you're applying what they're teaching you. They will invest more in you, right? And then seek the constructive feedback, not just the feedback, not just the attaboys and the good jobs and the gold stars, the constructive feedback. Help me learn. That's what we need to do. If you do those things, as long as you have a mentor that is a good human, and a caveat to all this that I will tell you is I can't promise you everybody's a good human, right? Most of us are. Even if you have someone you're working with, you feel like they're not connecting with you or they're not meeting you where you're at, it's probably not malicious, right? There are definitely people out there that are jerks. We're not going to work from the lens of your mentor's a jerk and then none of this is going to work, right? But the big caveat on all of this is, as long as they are a good human, even if you're having some conflicts, you're working through it, they want to work with you in some capacity, you can get to a better space. And if you find that they are not a good human, that's when you come talk to me and we work through your steps for resolution, right? So we're setting the negative person aside and we're thinking about everybody operating in good faith, right? My partner who works in human resources and things like that at outside profession and stuff like that, one of the core things she works on is the idea of assuming positive intent, right? So she gets an email from somebody and it's like, that doesn't seem right. She always tries to assume positive intent in the conversation, right? I think that frames a lot of her work and helps her be more effective at what she does. And I try to do the same thing. And it can be hard, right? But always try to assume positive intent and then try to seek that constructive feedback. But how do you do that is important. So First thing is I want you to know that you should be getting regular reviews with your mentor, right? And they should be effective for you. And I'll set you some guidelines on what you should reasonably expect from your mentor, right? And they should know this. But your mentor should give feedback that aligns with your long and your short-term goals, right? If you are putting your goals out there that you want to work in industry and all of their feedback is about how they can push you into a tenure track position, there is dissonance. You get to the conversation of, I don't want to be a professor. They may also say then, well, I don't know what feedback to give you because I've only ever been a professor. And there's a solution for that as well, right? But they should be working with you to give you alignment on your short and long-term goals, not pushing you in any one direction. That's not, as long as you're not trying to set something that's illicit, right? You're doing what you should be doing. They should be giving you feedback on how you're aligning with your program requirements. Are you meeting your milestones, right? You signed a milestone agreement when you started. If you never look at it again and you miss a milestone, that's on you and the mentor, that no one pulled it out and said, actually, you're supposed to complete this leveling exam by this semester and you haven't, right? Where are we at with that? So they should be giving you that feedback. They should also be giving you feedback on your quality of your goal setting and your progress, right? If you're setting goals that are really low bars, they should be challenging you to set tougher goals, right? If you're saying, I'm going to finish my dissertation in 10 years, they should be pushing you and saying, no, we like you. We don't like you that much. Can we get you out in 5, right? Because we want you to go do other things. They should be challenging you on that, helping you. They should be working from a positive feedback, asset-based approach, right? They should not be berating you or making you feel less than. It should be a positive place, even when it's constructive feedback, right? Even when it's telling you you're not meeting the expectation or you need to do better at this, there's still a constructive way to do that. It's from a positive approach, believing in your ability to do it. And they should revisit those goals with you throughout the year. You may need to prompt them on that, but they should be open to them. That's what you should expect from your reviews and your meetings with your mentor, right? So we know what to expect, but then we have to be in the driver's seat to get them to give us this feedback. And so that's where I want to talk about how you actually seek the feedback, right? Because all of this and the mentor and the relationship building and stuff, it comes down to how are we actually getting the good feedback on the work that we're doing that enables us to make improvements and move towards completion and be the person we want to be, right? To reach that faculty tenure track position, to work for a national laboratory. Without the feedback, it's going to be really difficult to get there. So there's some ways that you can do this that are shown to help improve feedback. First thing is on you. How are you seeking it, right? And so the first thing is I want you to make sure you're asking more frequently for feedback. If you ask once a year for feedback, you will not get good quality feedback, right? It's like exercising a muscle, right? Or building up your endurance. If you're like, I'm gonna run a marathon, and the only time I'm gonna run is on marathon day, you're gonna die. It's not gonna work. You're not gonna be able to make the marathon, right? So if you ask for feedback once a year, you're not gonna get good quality feedback. You'll get something, but it won't be what you need. Ask for it regularly and frequently. And then it's something you're regularly working on and you get comfortable in that environment. Your mentor gets comfortable in that environment and feedback quality will improve. Critically evaluate what kind of feedback you need. Ask for it specifically, right? And your mentor may have, I appreciate that you may want career feedback, but your writing needs some feedback. They're going to give them that driver's seat too, but they're not the only ones driving, right? And so let them know, this is what I need right now. Can you give me some performance feedback? I need some general coaching, or occasionally I might need some positive comments. And I see you have a question in the chat, yeah? Okay. I'm going to come to that question in the chat, but I'm going to talk about the positive comment. There'll definitely be times where you are tested in your programs, and it is hard. And it's okay to tell your mentor, like, can we talk a little? I'm having a really hard time. I feel like I'm not even in the right place right now. Can we take a session and just kind of go through my positive progress and help me reorient to see that I'm doing well so that we can come back to what do you need to fix, right? If you need that, you need to ask for that, right? If you need performance coaching, you need to ask for that. If it's just tell me what's going on, if you need professional feedback, what do I do to get to this career goal? How do I get there? You need to ask for that, right? So question in the chat. Can you send us a link to upload our Blackboard? That's a great question. So I will look into that. I think what you actually do is submit those to your program, and then they come through us. But I will look into that, and I will send all of the attendees some information about how you submit your IDPs. So I appreciate you asking that question. All right. So critically evaluate feedback you need. Seek feedback in a timely manner. Don't wait till, again, that annual review. That goes along with asking for it regularly. But when you finish a milestone of some kind, right? You finish a goal or you're making progress to it, get feedback on it then, right? If your goal is to submit or complete your chapter 3 by October, and you don't ask for feedback on that until May, you will not get good, timely feedback. So ask as things are happening so that it makes sense. And you're not asking for feedback on a lot of things at once, because then you'll get very brief, good job, met mark, this is okay, improve this, not really helping you, right? Ask open-ended questions in the conversation. How can I improve on this? What is happening here, right? Don't ask the question, do you have any feedback? Right? If you say, do you have any feedback? They will stand back and they will from a 30,000-foot perspective, and it's like way too much. And you're not driving at that point, right? So ask open-ended questions about what you're looking for. They are mentors, they are experienced. They will zero in on some things they want you to work on. They will give you some feedback, right? But if you just say, do you have any feedback on this? You're gonna all of a sudden it's like, and you may not get what you want, right? I often will tell folks and offer, like I will do help with resumes and CVs, right? And I always tell folks what I will give you feedback on first is always formatting. And then for formatting, then I'll work on content, because I see the formatting is usually bad. And once we get the formatting good, then we start talking about the content you've got, right? Because if your formatting doesn't look good, no one's going to read the content, right? But I also sometimes get folks saying, can I have feedback on my resume? And they just send it. What feedback do you want? And if I send back feedback, and if I haven't told them that, if I send them feedback on their formatting, like, that's not what I wanted. Is my content good, right? So tell me what you need. Help me know, do that. If you say, I want feedback, I'm going to come back and say, this is what I think, right? But if you have a very narrow thing that you need, tell me about that. If you get feedback that is vague, probe for examples, right? You need to improve your transitions in your writing. I just handed you 3 chapters. It's a lot of pages there. Can you give me some examples where you feel the transitions are weak? That'll help me zero in on what you're talking about. And do you have an example of where I've done it better than elsewhere? I can mirror that verbiage, right? Or that process, right? Probe for an example, right? Collect feedback on your goals and your performance, right? Was this a good goal? Is this a good goal? Did I do well meeting that goal, right? And then don't rely solely on email. This is a challenging one, right? We have become increasingly digital in our communication and how we interact with one another. Check in chat real quick. I saw a pop-up, right? Yes.
So I'm a little confused in the asking an open question.
Sure.
And avoiding a general question saying, "Oh, do you have an open feedback?" So should we be more specific about what we are expecting, or should we be more specific about what we to know what they're expecting out of us?
So it's a little bit of both. You probably want to know what so the mentor is going to, again, drive some of your experience and what they're going to look for. And each mentor is going to be a bit different. Right. You have someone that's going to push you for a little bit more, depth in a certain area for like your lit review or something like that. But when you're coming into those meetings and you're seeking feedback, right? Let's say, again, you recognize that writing's a good one to pick on. My transitions aren't very good. So asking, how can I improve my transitions in this chapter, right? How can I make my verbiage a little less scientific so it's not so dense, so that it is more readable by a lay audience? Do I need to do that? Am I doing well here on that? What am I missing from my methodology here? Is there any gaps that you see, right? Try to zero in on what you're seeing and like, I need some feedback on this, right? Versus again, if you especially if you're giving a large project, do you have any feedback? Is it going to meet your needs and what you think you need? They'll give, and if you look at it and say, like, you're asking about transitions, but the real issue here is your grammar is bad, right? And again, not everybody has the same quality of writer. That's okay, right? Even when we're functioning at high levels, if you're a research scientist, you may not be the best writer. It's all right. You may come in and say, I need help with transitions. And they're like, well, before we get to your transitions, I need you to stop using semicolons incorrectly. That's all right. Totally okay. But that's what I would say. Was that helpful?
Yeah.
Okay, great. The email piece, I think this is important. A lot of what we will do is be communicating back and forth with emails, with your mentor, with each other, with a lot of things. A lot of email, my interaction with students is email, right? Challenge is a lot of the nuance of communication gets lost in email, and it doesn't develop relationships. And you need a relationship with your mentor. So make sure you're meeting in some way. I encourage, if you can, meet them in person. At the very least, meet them virtually in person through a Teams meeting, a Zoom meeting, a phone call, something like that, to build those conversations. Really, if it's just transactional back and forth, one, it takes a lot longer. It feels more efficient. It's not. You may have an email thread that is 7 or 8 email exchanges back and forth that is a 5-minute conversation. And there's definitely been times where I've been in the office where I've got, it's bizarre actually, the way the professional world is developed, where I've literally sent a Teams message to my supervisor and then responded to an email from my supervisor. Well, something else. Then like, this is dumb. He's 20 steps away. I get like, hey, John, let's talk about this. It's just weird, right? And that's just, we've gotten to that mode of there's some utility and there's good to the digital communication. It cannot be the end all be all, right? And I encourage you, where you can, make some time to be face-to-face in person with the individual, right? I'm not faulting you all for joining us online. Thank you for being here. But I will tell you, if you're here in the room, it feels different for me and for you. And so where you can for different things, try to be in person where you can. It will help. Okay, so now we've talked about how do you try to get the feedback that you need. Being really good at asking for it will do you no good if you can't hear it well, right? If you're really good at saying, tell me a bit more about how I can find my way to this conference and meet the people that I need to get all this good feedback, if whatever they tell you is like hitting a brick wall because you don't want to hear it, right? Come on in. Hi. So you need to be able to receive the feedback well, right? There's a couple ways to just be better listeners with this. First is listen with the intent to hear, not to respond. This is general good ideas for how you communicate with other people, right? Oftentimes we're in conversation, our natural inclination is we're starting talking, we're in conversation, and our thought is, how are we going to continue the dialogue? It's not even a selfish thing. It's just like a social anxiety thing of like, I need to be ready to say something, right? Usually why we also forget somebody's name. They introduce ourselves, and we start, and the first thing we're thinking of, what am I going to say, right? You need to slow down and you need to really tune into what they're saying. Listen with the intent to hear, not to respond. And that's particularly important when you're getting feedback, because it may be critical. Even if it's a positive lens, it may be critical. So how are you wanting to internalize that and reflect on it? Take time to process before responding, right? Our inclination is to get defensive when we get critical feedback. You need to push that down a little bit, right? I need to think on that. I need to reflect on it. And then I need to respond to that. Some things can be challenged, right? Just because the mentor says it doesn't mean it's the gospel, right? So take time, process, and then tease out how you have that conversation. Ask for more information if it's needed. If they give you feedback and you don't understand it, or you disagree with it, ask them for more information, examples. Talk me through that, right? It's interesting. Can you tell me a bit more? I'm struggling to really latch on to and understand what you're telling me with that. Can you give me an example? Right? That's okay. It's showing engagement, right? If you need more time, ask for it. If that's more time to complete a project or like a deadline, right, that you can push, or it's you need more time to think about something, right? That's some heavy feedback. Can I get back to you tomorrow? That's okay. You're a person. You're a human. Work on creating an action plan for improvement, right? So you get that piece of dialogue that your grammar is atrocious and you need to fix it. Okay, can we create an action plan on how I can do that? Because I've gotten this far throwing semicolons at my work without anybody noticing. How do I fix that? They can lead you to the resources, right? I have a great resource for that, by the way. Super easy. Create that action plan. Seek peer support as well, right? If you have those moments like this is really tough, go out, grab a cup of coffee with your peers and just decompress from that, right? It's not a time to just trash your mentor, right? But it's okay to talk about what the experience is like and seek that support and know that you're not the only one going through it, right? All of you as graduate students are experiencing tough times, high stress, and moments where you feel like you're not making the progress you should make. I was talking to Elizabeth the other day. I've only ever known one doctoral student in my entire time in 15 years working in higher ed, only one that didn't seem like he was way over busy. He was a law student that I only ever saw read the paper. Seemed like he was never doing anything. He finished, he got his JD, he works at a law firm. He must have been really, really smart. But I'm like, what are you working on? He's like, nothing, I was reading the paper. The only one in 15 years. You guys are really busy. Talk to each other about that. You're not the only one, right? And then follow up long-term. When you get the feedback, you internalize, you go through all of this, the next meeting, follow up and show. I actually went to the writing center. I had them go through some things. I did some review. Jesse sent me this really great comic from the Oatmeal that illustrates how to use a semicolon. It was funny and I understood it. And so I've removed and fixed that issue in my writing. Cool, look, you did it. Move on to the next thing, right? That again shows you're listening and they're going to give you more feedback when they see that they're having an impact on you. So make sure you follow up long-term. Make sense? Wonderful. All right. So we are at a little over on time, actually. So thank you all for coming through. I always have this session. I always have some ideas in for an activity, and I always feel like I run out of time on it. But what I encourage you to do is maybe work with your peers on this and maybe take this activity for yourself and kind of do this. But it's important to think about what you want out of the mentor relationship. And these are the questions I encourage you to ask. How frequently do you want to meet with your mentor? What type of feedback are you seeking? What other types of coaching do you hope to receive? Job search, networking, work-life balance. And then how professional versus informal do you expect the relationship to be? And then you need to be able to talk with your mentor about that, knowing that all of these things are negotiations. They will have their own ideas. You may want a mentor that is very informal. We never meet in their office. We're always at the coffee shop talking. And your mentor may be like, I do not meet with students outside my office. I have a barrier there. Maybe they had a past experience that was really negative, and so they refused to meet with a student outside their office. You don't know that until you have that conversation about it, right? But finding ways to meet on that. Talk with your peers about this. Do this for your own self. Figure out what that is, and then have that dialogue with your mentor. And when you think about what type of feedback are you seeking, or whether coaching do you need, I mentioned the whole piece of like, you might have a mentor that's like, I've only ever been an academic. I don't know how to help you find that government job. This is where you seek additional mentors. And that's not a challenge to your mentor. In your lives, in your professional and academic lives, to be truly successful, you will need multiple mentors over time. And sometimes they're a mentor for a month, and sometimes they're a mentor for your entire career. And run the whole span of that, right? So if you have a faculty member that is focused on academics and they tell you, like, that's not really my area, that's where you ask them to help you, or you intentionally seek out someone that can give you that additional feedback to get to your goals, right? Don't let their immediate area dictate what your goals can be. And they will not be offended when you say, that's okay. I'm going to work. And then you can bring in that conversation to them. How have I been additionally working towards these goals, right? That shows initiative. That's going to be a good thing. All right. All right. Well, thank you very much. I'm gonna check the chat real quick for any questions. I know the question about submission of IDPs. I'll send something to everybody who came today with information about that. As far as providing the PowerPoint presentation, there is a recording of this session already online. I will check it, and if this recording is better, I'll re-edit and upload it. But along with sending information about the IDPs, I will send you the recordings that we have. So if you want to revisit any of this content, I said something, you're like, I remember he said something about semicolons. He kept rattling on about it. You can go back, you can find that stuff, right? So you got it. So I generally don't send PowerPoints, but I always have the recordings. But thank you very much. For folks online, thanks for joining us. For our folks in person, thank you for joining us. Appreciate you. I am going to go ahead and close down because we have a session starting right after this with postdocs. So I'm going to go and transition and meet with them. But you all have a great day. Thank you.